Captain Veltar felt his heart racing as he stared at the warning lights flashing across his ship's control panel. The gentle current was dying around him. Red alerts screamed through the small research vessel as its main engine finally gave up after 3 days of failing systems. "Captain, we have lost all propulsion," said Science Officer Krixna, his thin, insect-like arms shaking as he worked at his station. "Life support will fail in 6 hours." Veltar closed his 4 eyes and tried to think clearly. His crew of 12 researchers had been studying peaceful gas clouds near the edge of this sector when their engine broke down. Now they drifted helplessly in the cold darkness of space, far from any Zephyrian colonies that could help them. "Sir," called Communications Officer Theiss from across the small bridge, "I am picking up movement on long-range sensors. Multiple ships approaching fast." The captain's blood turned cold. He knew what ships moved that fast in this area. The Grimlock raiders had been hunting merchant vessels here for months. His small science ship had no weapons, no armor, and no way to run. "How long until they reach us?" Veltar asked. 2 hours, maybe less," Theiss replied, her voice barely a whisper. Veltar looked around at his crew. They were all young scientists from his homeworld, a peaceful garden planet where violence was almost unknown. None of them had ever seen a Grimlock warrior. They had only heard the terrible stories of what happened to crews that fell into pirate hands. "Captain," Krixna said quietly, "there is something we could try. The emergency protocol database. Every Zephyrian ship carried the ancient database. It contained contact information for species throughout the galaxy that might help in emergencies. The list was thousands of years old and rarely used. Most entries were for civilizations that had long since fallen or moved to other parts of space. Find the closest entry," Veltar ordered. Krixna worked quickly at his console. "There is one listing relatively close. A species called humans from a planet named Earth. The database lists them as a protective species." "What does that mean?" "The old records say they are classified as Deathworlders, but they have helped other species before. The entry says they respond to distress calls." Veltar had heard of Deathworlders before. They were species from the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Worlds where the environment tried to kill everything that lived there. The beings that survived such places were often violent and unpredictable. But what choice did he have? In less than 2 hours, Grimlock raiders would board his ship. His crew would face torture, slavery, or worse. At least with the humans, there was a small chance they might help instead of harm. "Send the distress signal," Veltar commanded. On the other side of space, Admiral Jack Harrison was finishing his morning coffee in the command center of Earth's Luna base when the communication array detected the alien signal. The message came through the universal translator that Earth had built, based on technology traded from peaceful aliens years ago. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Tony Baker from the communication station, "we have an emergency distress call from an unknown species. They are requesting immediate assistance from capable defenders." Harrison walked over to look at the message details. The alien ship was small, apparently a research vessel and located near known pirate territory. The request seemed straightforward enough. "Any signs of hostile activity in that area?" Harrison asked. "Yes, sir," replied Commander Lisa Rodriguez, the base tactical officer. "Intelligence reports show increased Grimlock raider activity along those shipping lanes in recent weeks." Harrison nodded. The Grimlocks were well known to human forces. They were a warrior species that attacked merchant ships and enslaved crews. Several human trade vessels had been hit by Grimlock raids in the past year. "Prep the Retribution for immediate deployment," Harrison ordered. Full battle configuration. The UES Retribution was Earth's newest and most powerful warship. At 1 kilometer long, the massive dreadnought carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Its crew of 3,000 included some of humanity's best soldiers, all veterans of the colonial wars that had raged across human space for decades. Captain Ryan Burke was in his quarters, studying tactical reports when the deployment order came through. He had commanded the Retribution for 2 years, leading it through dozens of successful missions against pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens who threatened human colonies. Burke was a tough man who had grown up on Earth during the resource wars. His face was marked with scars from radiation exposure during the Mars Liberation Campaign. He had lost count of how many battles he had fought, but every victory had been won to protect innocent people from those who would hurt them. "Captain on the bridge," called the watch officer as Burke entered the command center. "Status report," Burke said as he took his command chair. All systems ready for departure, replied his executive officer, Commander Steve Martinez. Fusion drives at full power, weapons charged, and crew at battle stations. Good. Plot a course for the distress signal coordinates. Maximum speed. The Retribution's massive engines roared to life, pushing the great warship out of Earth's solar system and into faster-than-light travel. In the ship's fighter bays, pilots checked their craft and weapons. In the Marine quarters, soldiers prepared their power armor and assault rifles. In the medical bay, doctors readied trauma equipment for potential casualties. None of them knew that this routine rescue mission would change everything. The humans thought they were simply helping another species in trouble, just as they had done many times before. They had no idea that most of the galaxy lived in terror of their very existence. Burke stood on his bridge and watched the stars streak past at impossible speed. In a few hours they would reach the alien ship. He hoped they would arrive in time to help, and that the aliens would be peaceful. First contact situations could be tricky, but Burke had handled them before. What he did not know was that the aliens were already more terrified of him than of the pirates who hunted them. The desperate signal had been sent, and now both species rushed toward a meeting that would reshape the galaxy forever. Science Officer Crixna was the first to see the approaching human ship on his sensors. What he saw made his thin body shake with fear. The energy readings were impossible. The vessel approaching them had weapons that could destroy planets and shields stronger than most space stations. "Captain," Crixna whispered, his voice barely audible. "The humans are almost here. But sir, their ship is enormous. The weapons readings are off every scale we have." Captain Veltar moved to look at the sensor display. The numbers made no sense. How could any species build something so powerful? The approaching vessel was 50 times larger than his research ship, and carried enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. "Maybe the sensors are broken," suggested Communications Officer Thess, but her voice showed she did not believe her own words. Then the human ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and the crew of the Gentle Current saw it with their own eyes. The U.S. Retribution was a nightmare made real. 1 kilometer of dark metal and weapon arrays, it looked like a predator from the deepest parts of space. Gun ports lined its hull like teeth in a great mouth. Shield generators glowed with barely contained energy. Engine exhausts burned like the fires of dying stars. "By the sacred gardens," whispered Veltar. "What have we done?" The human ship moved closer with careful precision. Every movement spoke of controlled violence, like a great beast deciding whether its prey was worth eating. The Gentle Current was so small next to the Retribution that it looked like a tiny fish next to a space whale. "Incoming transmission," Thys announced, her voice cracking with terror. The main screen flickered to life, and Captain Ryan Burke's scarred face appeared. To the humans, this was standard first contact protocol. Burke sat relaxed in his command chair, trying to look friendly and non-threatening. But to the Zephyrians, he looked like death itself. Burke's face was marked with radiation scars from years of fighting in the most dangerous places in human space. His eyes were hard and calculating, the eyes of a man who had killed many enemies to protect innocent people. When he smiled, trying to be welcoming, the aliens saw only the grin of a predator. "This is Captain Ryan Burke of the U.S. Retribution," he said in what he thought was a calm, reassuring voice. "We received your distress call. Are you in need of assistance?" The Zephyrian crew huddled together in terror. Burke's casual mention of his ship's name sent waves of fear through them. Retribution meant revenge, punishment, violence. What kind of species named their ships after concepts of warfare? We are grateful for your response," Veltar managed to say, though his words shook with fear. "Our engines have failed and we cannot move." "Understood," Burke replied. "We have detected Grimlock raiders moving toward this position. We will eliminate any threats in the area, then provide assistance to your vessel." The word eliminate hit the aliens like a physical blow. The human captain spoke of destroying other ships like he was discussing the weather. How powerful were these beings that they could casually promise to wipe out an entire raider fleet? On the Retribution's bridge, Commander Steve Martinez was analyzing the alien ship. "Captain, their vessel appears to be a research craft. No weapons, minimal shields. They are completely defenseless." "Poor design for operating in raider territory," Burke observed. "Prepare a boarding party. We need to assess their condition and determine if they need medical attention." The idea of humans boarding their ship sent the Zephyrians into near panic. But before Veltar could object, His sensors detected the Grimlock fleet approaching. 12 heavily armed raider ships were closing fast, and they had clearly decided that 2 ships were better than 1 for raiding. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster led the human boarding party. She was a veteran Marine who had fought in more battles than she could count. Her power armor was designed for soldiers who might have to fight on worlds with crushing gravity, poisonous air, or radiation that would kill most aliens instantly. When Foster and her squad of 12 Marines docked with the gentle current, the sound of their boots on the alien ship's deck was like thunder. Each human was nearly twice the height of the Zephyrians, and their armor made them look like walking tanks. Foster removed her helmet to show goodwill, revealing a human face marked by years of combat. She had scars from energy weapons, burns from chemical attacks, and the hard eyes of someone who had seen too much death. To her, this was a friendly gesture. To the aliens, it was like looking at a demon. "I am Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster," she said, trying to keep her voice gentle. "We are here to help you. Are any of your crew injured?" The Zephyrians pressed themselves against the walls of their small bridge, too terrified to speak. Foster looked around at the alien equipment with interest. Everything was designed for beings much smaller and more fragile than humans. The chairs looked like they would break under human weight. The control panels were marked with symbols that resembled flower petals. "Captain," one of Foster's Marines called out, "their life support is failing. Oxygen levels are dropping fast." Foster nodded and activated her communicator. "Retribution, this is Foster. The alien ship is in critical condition. Recommend immediate evacuation to our vessel." "Negative," came Burke's voice. "Grimlock raiders will be in weapons range in 10 minutes. Secure the alien crew and prepare for combat." As if summoned by his words, the enemy ships appeared on the gentle current sensors. 12 Grimlock vessels, each bristling with weapons and loaded with warriors eager for battle. The raiders had been hunting easy prey, but now they saw something that made their cruel hearts sing with joy. 2 ships meant more slaves, more treasure, more victims to torture for their amusement. The lead Grimlock captain, War Chief Thok the Bone Crusher, looked at his tactical display and grinned. The unknown vessel was large, but his ships outnumbered it 12 to 1. This would be a good day for killing. Thok had terrorized this sector for years. He had destroyed dozens of merchant ships and enslaved thousands of beings. His reputation for cruelty was legendary even among his own brutal people. He opened a communication channel to the human ship, ready to demand their surrender. But when he looked at the tactical readings more carefully, Thok's grin faded. The enemy ship's energy signature was beyond anything he had ever seen. Its weapons could vaporize his flagship with a single shot. Its shields could absorb everything his fleet could throw at them. For the first time in his violent life, Thok the Bone Crusher felt a cold touch of fear. But he had gone too far to turn back now. His fleet was already committed to the attack. All he could do was hope that numbers would overcome the enemy's superior technology. He was about to learn why humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other before they reached the stars. They had learned to be very, very good at war. War Chief Thok the Bone Crusher stared at his tactical display with growing unease. The human ship was much larger than he had first thought. Its weapons signature read like nothing in his database, but he had committed his fleet to this attack, and backing down would make him look weak in front of his warriors. "All ships, attack formation 7, Thok growled into his communicator. "Target the big ship first. Once we cripple it, we can take the small one intact." 12 Grimlock raider ships spread out in a hunting pattern. Each vessel was 3 times the size of the alien research ship, armed with plasma cannons and missile pods. They had destroyed hundreds of merchant vessels using these same tactics. Overwhelming firepower and superior numbers had never failed them before. Captain Burke watched the enemy ships approach on his main screen. He had faced raiders many times in his career, but never this many at once. Still, he felt no fear. The Retribution had been built specifically to fight multiple enemies. Its weapons and shields were designed by humans who understood that sometimes you had to fight when outnumbered. "All hands battle stations," Burke announced over the ship's communication system. "Marine squads prepare for possible boarding actions. Fighter squadrons launch when ready." Throughout the massive human warship, 3,000 crew members moved to their combat positions. In the weapons bays, gunners checked their targeting computers and loaded the massive particle cannons. In the fighter hangars, pilots ran final checks on their small, deadly craft. Commander Steve Martinez monitored the approaching enemy fleet from his tactical station. "Captain, they are moving to surround us. Classic pirate formation designed to prevent escape. They have made one mistake, Burke replied calmly. They assume we want to escape. The first Grimlock salvo came without warning. Dozens of plasma bolts and missiles streaked across space toward the Retribution. The attack would have destroyed any normal ship, vaporizing its hull and killing everyone inside. But the Retribution was not a normal ship. The human warship's shields flared to life, absorbing the enemy fire like a stone wall stopping arrows. Energy readings barely flickered as the defensive systems handled the assault with ease. On the Grimlock ships, warriors stared in disbelief at their weapon displays. Their most powerful attacks had done absolutely nothing to the human vessel. Return fire, Burke ordered. Target the lead ship. The Retribution's main guns were particle cannons designed to crack the armor of enemy battleships. When they fired, space itself seemed to bend around the energy beams. The lead Grimlock vessel, Thok's flagship, took the full force of the human attack directly to its central hull. The raider ship simply ceased to exist. In less than a second, it was transformed from a mighty warship into an expanding cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. War Chief Thok the Bone Crusher, terror of the space lanes for 20 years, died without even time to scream. On the remaining Grimlock ships, panic spread like wildfire. Warriors who had spent their lives bullying defenseless merchants suddenly faced an enemy that could destroy them with casual ease. Several ships began to turn away, their captains deciding that survival was more important than pride. But Burke was not finished. The Retribution's gun arrays tracked and fired with mechanical precision. A second raider exploded, then a third. Each shot was perfectly aimed, each impact instantly fatal. The human ship moved through space with surprising grace for something so massive, its maneuvering thrusters allowing it to avoid enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster watched the battle from the alien research ship, where she was still trying to calm the terrified Zephyrian crew. Through the small ship's viewports, she could see explosions lighting up space as Grimlock vessels died one by one. "Your ship is very powerful," Captain Veltar managed to say, his voice filled with awe and terror. "The Retribution is designed to protect innocent people," Foster replied, trying to sound reassuring. "Those raiders have been attacking merchant ships in this sector. They needed to be stopped." What Foster did not mention was that human military doctrine considered pirates to be one of the worst types of enemies. Humans had fought countless wars against each other, but they had strict rules about civilians and non-combatants. Species that attacked defenseless ships and enslaved crews violated every principle that human soldiers held sacred. On the Retribution's bridge, Martinez called out target information as the battle continued. 6 enemy ships destroyed, 4 attempting to retreat, 2 still closing on our position. "Launch fighters," Burke commanded. "Do not let any of them escape." From the human warship's fighter bays, small craft streaked into space like deadly insects. Each fighter was piloted by a veteran who had trained for years to fight in the darkness between stars. Their ships were fast, heavily armed, and equipped with the best technology human science could produce. The fleeing Grimlock raiders found themselves hunted by enemies that could match their speed and outfight them at every turn. Human pilots had grown up playing video games that tested their reflexes and trained their minds for three-dimensional combat. They flew through asteroid fields and around space debris with skill that seemed almost supernatural to their enemies. One by one, the remaining raider ships died. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas for mercy in broken universal language. But Burke had studied Grimlock records. He knew what these pirates did to their captives. Mercy was not something they had ever shown to others. The last Grimlock ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its fusion reactor overloading under the concentrated fire of 6 human fighters. In less than 20 minutes, an entire raider fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single Grimlock warrior survived to tell others what had happened here. Science Officer Crixina watched the battle end from his position on the Gentle Currents bridge. His instruments had recorded everything. The human ship had faced 12 enemies simultaneously and won without taking any damage at all. The power levels he had measured were beyond anything in Zephyrian science. "Lieutenant Colonel Foster," Crixina said quietly, "how many ships like yours do the humans have?" Foster thought about the question for a moment. The Retribution was one of Earth's newest and most powerful vessels, but it was not unique. Human space was defended by hundreds of similar warships, each crewed by soldiers trained from birth to fight and win. "Enough," she answered simply. Captain Burke's voice came over the communication system. "All Grimlock vessels neutralized. Begin recovery operations. Medical teams prepare to receive alien casualties." As human shuttles moved to collect any survivors from the alien research ship, Feltar realized that his desperate gamble had worked better than he could have hoped. The humans were not the savage killers he had expected. They were protectors, beings who risked their lives to defend those who could not defend themselves. But they were also the most dangerous warriors he had ever seen. In 20 minutes, they had wiped out a raider fleet that had terrorized this entire sector. They had done it without anger, without cruelty, with the calm efficiency of professionals doing a necessary job. Word of this battle would spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. Soon every species in known space would know that the humans had returned to active service as protectors of the innocent. The galaxy was about to change in ways that no one could predict. 3 Grimlock ships had tried to escape during the final moments of the battle, but Commander Martinez had predicted their flight paths perfectly. The Retribution's faster-than-light interdictor field activated, trapping the remaining pirates in normal space where the human fighters could hunt them down. The last raider captain, a scarred veteran named Grutak the Slayer, found his ship surrounded by 6 human fighters. His engines were damaged and his weapons were nearly depleted. For the first time in his brutal career, he activated his ship's surrender beacon. "Human vessels, this is Captain Grutak," he broadcast on all frequencies. "I surrender. I claim prisoner of war status under galactic law." Captain Burke studied the transmission for a moment, then opened a channel to the enemy ship. "Grutak, this is Captain Burke. You are accused of piracy, murder, and slavery. Galactic law does not protect criminals." "Wait," Grutak pleaded, his voice cracking with fear. "We can make a deal. I have information about other pirate fleets, treasure locations, slave markets. I can help you." Burke's expression hardened. "Prepare to be boarded." Sergeant Major Kyle Thompson led the boarding party that docked with Grutak's crippled ship. Thompson was a veteran Marine who had fought on 12 different worlds, from the ice fields of Europa to the burning deserts of Kepler 442b. His squad moved through the Grimlock vessel like wolves hunting prey. The Grimlock crew tried to resist, but they were no match for human soldiers. Thompson's men had trained in Earth's crushing gravity and poisonous atmosphere. They wore armor that could stop plasma bolts and carried weapons that could punch through starship hull plating. The pirates, who had terrorized merchant crews for years, found themselves completely outclassed. Within an hour, every surviving Grimlock warrior was in chains. Thompson's interrogation of the prisoners revealed intelligence that shocked even the experienced Marine. The pirates had detailed information about dozens of peaceful species throughout the sector. "All living in constant fear of raids, Captain," Thompson reported to Burke over secure communication. "These raiders have been systematically attacking civilian populations across 8 star systems. They have slave markets on 4 different worlds and weapons caches hidden throughout the sector." Burke listened to the report with growing anger. The Grimlocks were not just pirates. They were running an entire criminal empire built on the suffering of innocent people. For a human military officer trained to protect civilians above all else, this was intolerable. "Sergeant Major, prepare detailed intelligence reports for Fleet Command. We are going to shut down this entire operation." While the human Marines processed their prisoners, Dr. Patricia Wells worked in the Retribution's medical bay with the Zephyrian crew. The alien researchers had suffered no physical injuries, but they were in severe emotional shock from their ordeal. Dr. Wells was a gentlewoman who had volunteered for deep space service to help explore the galaxy peacefully. She spoke softly to the frightened aliens, offering them food and medical attention with genuine kindness. Her bedside manner began to crack through their terror. "Please do not be afraid," she told Captain Veltar as she checked his vital signs. "You are safe now. The pirates cannot hurt you anymore." Veltar studied the human doctor with growing curiosity. She was so different from the warriors who had destroyed the Grimlock fleet. Her hands were soft, her voice gentle, her manner caring. How could the same species produce both devastating fighters and compassionate healers? Science Officer Crixna was the first Zephyrian to overcome his fear enough to ask questions. He found Dr. Wells in her laboratory, studying samples of Zephyrian biology to better understand their medical needs. "Dr. Wells," Crixna said hesitantly, "may I ask you something about your people?" Of course, she replied with a warm smile. What would you like to know? Your warriors destroyed 12 ships in minutes, but you treat us with such kindness. Are all humans like this? Dr. Wells considered the question carefully. Humans fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We learned long ago that the strong have a duty to defend the weak. Violence is sometimes necessary, but it should never be the first choice. As news of the battle spread through subspace communication networks, the galaxy began to buzz with rumors and stories. The peaceful species whispered of powerful protectors who had appeared from nowhere to defend innocent researchers. Merchant captains shared tales of human warships that could destroy entire pirate fleets. The predatory species told darker stories. In the criminal underworld, survivors of the Grimlock fleet were already spreading word about the terrifying human ship. They spoke of weapons that could vaporize battleships and soldiers who fought like demons from the deepest hells. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the Planetary Council received Veltar's report with amazement. The humans had not only saved their research team, but had eliminated a major threat to civilian shipping. The Council immediately voted to send an official thank you message to Earth. Similar reactions occurred throughout the sector. Species that had lived in fear of Grimlock raids for decades suddenly found themselves free. Trade routes that had been too dangerous to use became safe again. Merchant ships began carrying human escort beacons, hoping to receive protection if they encountered pirates. Admiral Harrison on Luna Base found himself flooded with communication requests from alien governments. Some wanted to establish formal diplomatic relations. Others offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. A few asked directly for human military protection against various threats. Sir, reported Lieutenant Tony Baker, we have received 47 official communications from different species in the past 6 hours. They all want to meet with human representatives. Harrison leaned back in his chair and smiled. First contact situations usually took years of careful negotiation to establish basic communication. But Captain Burke's decisive action against the pirates had accomplished more diplomacy in one day than most species achieved in decades. Captain Burke himself was unaware of the larger implications of his actions. He was focused on the tactical situation, studying star charts and planning follow-up operations against Grimlock bases. For him, this had been a routine anti-piracy mission that happened to involve first contact with a new species. But throughout the galaxy, the legend was already growing. The humans had returned to active duty as protectors of the innocent. Species that had only heard ancient rumors about the mythical Deathworlders now knew they were real, and they were on the side of peace. The irony was not lost on the galaxy's historians. The beings they had feared most had become their greatest protectors. The species classified as too dangerous to contact had proven to be exactly what the civilized galaxy needed most. 3 months after the first contact with the Zephyrians, the UES Retribution had become the most famous ship in the galaxy. Captain Burke's decision to patrol the major trade routes had resulted in the complete elimination of piracy in a region that had not known peace for decades. The human warship no longer traveled alone. A small fleet of alien vessels accompanied it now, including several Zephyrian research ships that had volunteered to serve as scouts and diplomats. Captain Veltar commanded one of these vessels, his initial terror replaced by deep respect and friendship for the humans who had saved his life. Captain Burke, Veltar's voice came over the communication system. We are receiving distress signals from the Altair system. 3 merchant ships under attack by unknown raiders. Burke studied the tactical display on his bridge. The Altair system was 4 light-years away, but the Retribution could reach it in 2 hours at maximum speed. More importantly, the attacking ships matched the signatures of vessels reported missing from recent Grimlock raids. Set course for Altair system, maximum speed, Burke ordered. Battle stations, all hands. The response throughout the ship was immediate and professional. Human crews had been fighting pirates for months now, and they had developed their tactics to a fine art. Every sailor knew his job. Every Marine understood the mission. Protect the innocent, eliminate the threats, show mercy to those who deserved it. Lieutenant Commander Greg Adams commanded the newly established Sector Patrol, a joint operation between human forces and allied alien species. His flotilla consisted of 3 human destroyers, each smaller than the Retribution, but still powerful enough to handle most pirate fleets. Adams was a young officer who had grown up hearing stories about the old Earth wars. He understood that humans fought not from bloodlust but from an unshakable commitment to defending those who could not defend themselves. This principle now extended to their adopted galactic family. Admiral Harrison to all patrol units, came the transmission from Luna base. Intelligence reports indicate increased hostile activity in the Vega sector. Civilian populations are requesting immediate assistance. Acknowledged Luna base, Adams replied. Patrol Group Alpha responding. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. The system they had created was working better than anyone had dared hope. Human warships provided the muscle, while allied species contributed intelligence, logistics, and diplomatic support. The Zephyrians had proven especially valuable as mediators, their peaceful nature helping to calm the fears of species encountering humans for the first time. Dr. Patricia Wells had been promoted to Chief of Xenobiology and now ran the largest alien cultural research program in human history. Her studies revealed fascinating insights about the diverse species of the galaxy, but also troubling information about the criminal networks that had preyed upon them. Captain, Dr. Wells reported to Burke during one of their regular briefings, my analysis of the prisoner interrogations shows that the Grimlock operation was much larger than we initially believed. They were not just pirates. They were running protection rackets on dozens of worlds. Burke nodded grimly. How many species were paying tribute to avoid raids? At least 30 civilizations that we know of. Some had been paying for over a century. They gave up significant portions of their resources just to keep the raiders away from their colonies. The scope of the criminal empire shocked even experienced human officers. Entire species had lived in fear for generations, their development stunted by the constant threat of pirate attacks. Resources that should have gone to education, medicine, and exploration had instead been handed over to criminals. But the tide was turning rapidly. As news of human protection spread, more and more species reached out to establish contact. The Terran Protection Compact had grown from a simple, mutual defense agreement into a galactic alliance spanning dozens of star systems. Captain Veltar often served as an unofficial ambassador during first contact situations. His gentle manner and scientific background helped ease the fears of species meeting humans for the first time. But even he was amazed by how quickly the alliance was growing. Captain Burke, Veltar said during one of their regular strategy meetings, the Council of 12 Worlds has voted to offer humanity permanent membership. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations. The Council of 12 Worlds was one of the oldest peaceful alliances in the galaxy. For them to invite a military power like humanity into their ranks was unprecedented. It showed how much the political landscape had changed in just a few months. Burke considered the offer carefully. What would be our obligations as members? Mainly to continue doing what you are already doing, protecting member worlds from hostile forces and helping to maintain peace in civilized space. The irony was not lost on Burke. Humanity had stumbled into becoming the galaxy's police force almost by accident. What had started as a simple rescue mission had evolved into a role that humans seemed uniquely suited to fill. On Earth, political leaders were still trying to understand the full implications of their new status. President Sarah Johnson called an emergency session of the Global Council to discuss humanity's expanding responsibilities. We have become protectors for over 200 billion alien civilians, reported Defense Secretary Mike Chen. Our naval forces are stretched thin trying to patrol all the trade routes and colony worlds that have requested our protection. What are our options? President Johnson asked. We can either withdraw from some commitments or significantly expand our military forces. The aliens are offering to help with construction and resources, but they need our personnel and technology. The decision was easier than many had expected. Humanity had always been at its best when fighting for principles larger than themselves. The chance to bring peace and security to an entire galaxy was an opportunity that could not be passed up. Construction began immediately on humanity's first deep space station. The massive facility, built in the neutral space between several allied star systems, would serve as headquarters for the Terran Defense Force. Alien governments contributed resources and technology, while human engineers provided the design and construction expertise. Captain Burke stood on the Retribution's observation deck, watching as the new station took shape. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species worked together in perfect coordination. Human destroyers provided security while Zephyrian science vessels conducted survey work. Altarian cargo haulers brought construction materials while Centauri engineers installed communications equipment. "It is remarkable," said Science Officer Krixna, who had become Burke's unofficial alien relations advisor. 6 months ago, most of these species had never heard of each other. Now they work together like old friends. "Fear has a way of bringing people together," Burke observed. "When everyone faces the same threat, differences become less important." The final scene of this remarkable transformation came during the dedication ceremony for the new station. Representatives from over 50 species gathered to witness the official establishment of the Galactic Peace Alliance. Admiral Harrison gave a short speech about humanity's commitment to protecting the innocent and maintaining justice among the stars. But the real moment came when Captain Veltar stepped forward to present humanity with the Alliance's first Medal of Honor. The small Zephyrian had traveled far from the terrified researcher who had sent that desperate distress signal months ago. 6 months ago, we made a mistake, Veltar said, his voice carrying clearly through the station's communication system. We called for help from beings we thought were dangerous killers. We were wrong about the killing, but we were right about the danger. You are dangerous to those who would hurt the innocent. You are dangerous to those who prey upon the weak. You are dangerous to injustice itself. He paused, looking around at the assembled crowd of humans and aliens working together. That mistake was the greatest fortune that ever happened to this galaxy. We asked for protectors and we received guardians. We asked for help and we received hope. As the ceremony ended and the station began its operations, the galaxy had indeed found new hope. The trade routes were safe, the colonies were secure, and for the first time in generations, peaceful species could explore the stars without fear. The predatory species that had once terrorized civilized space now huddled in the dark corners of the galaxy, sharing fearful stories about the human ships that brought justice to the stars. The Zephyrians' desperate mistake had become the galaxy's greatest salvation. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, not as conquerors, but as the guardians the galaxy had always needed.